All right, joining our panel now, Jamil Jaffer. He's a former counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for National Security. Jamil, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Really appreciate it. All right, so as we head into day 2 of this investigation, what are your big questions? What would you be focusing on right now to try to understand how this happened?
Well, one, I think you need to figure out, how did this guy get radicalized, right? You've had an American citizen born in the United States, served in the military with what appears to be an honorable discharge for almost 13 years. 8 years as active duty, 5 years as a reservist. How does he get radicalized? How does he get to the point where he decides to drive a car into a crowd in New Orleans, kill 15 people, and have bombs in his truck in an attempt to potentially kill others?
I mean, how prevalent do you think that is? I mean, there's been this concern about lone wolf attacks in the United States. How concerned should U.S. officials be about people trying to replicate this, about other lone wolf attacks coming forward? Well,
we know that it's been a target of ISIS. ISIS and al-Qaeda have been trying for years to recruit Americans in the United States and, frankly, Europeans in Europe to conduct attacks in their home countries, not to come to the fight in Syria or come to the fight in the Middle East, but to conduct those attacks here to bring terror to the United States. So it's definitely a concern. We saw Major Nid al-Hassan back in the day conduct an attack like this, another military officer. So these are concerns that need to be addressed in figuring out what is causing this radicalization, how can we prevent it, how can we identify it ahead of time before it ends in deadly results like this one did.
Because, I mean, one thing that I've been wondering about is that we've learned about, there were some videos that he apparently posted saying that he wanted to join ISIS, that he wanted to apparently kill his family. Now, CNN has not reviewed those videos, but apparently they are out there. Should that have, raised some red flags for officials? Or, when you say something like that, that's against the law to say that I want to kill my family. I mean, shouldn't have authorities been alerted to this?
Well, look, obviously, if those videos were out there, we heard President Biden talk about these videos on social media. I haven't seen them out there yet, but if we identify those, if you can identify them ahead of time, then, of course, authorities need to take action, do the investigation, see if this is a real threat, right? At the same time, Americans are able to talk about their own political views. Now, in this case, he's talking about killing people, threatening people. That's a problem, right? But we haven't seen these videos. We got to see what they are, see who saw them, and what was identified and why we didn't catch this. And were there any communications that he had with folks overseas in ISIS or other groups, or was he simply watching videos online? And if so, how do we address that issue as well?
Stephen, these lone wolf attacks have been a concern of U.S. officials for many years.
Right. FBI Director Wray has been warning about this for months, even years. Every time he goes before the Congress, he says, our biggest fear is homegrown terrorism. And I think one of the concerns is not just how difficult these things are to stop. It's when you look at the situation in Syria, the fall of the Assad government, if there's a power vacuum there and ISIS can make a comeback, then it gives people who are disaffected, who are looking for inspiration, something to latch onto. And that's going to be one of the big questions for the Trump administration coming in. Do they maintain that U.S. presence in Syria, which is designed purely to stop ISIS, as a way of trying to make people in the homeland safer?
How much do you think this will impact the inauguration? I mean, this is coming up on January 20th. And the transition, this is coming in, obviously, there's already been questions about how the transition would take place, and this happening with just 3 weeks until Trump takes the office.
I mean, I think that people will be looking at this differently. They'll have a different lens. But I do think that in Washington, for these events, the federal government leads the preparations for them, and they've been, their NSSE events. They handle the conventions, which are traditionally very safe. So I'm not concerned about something happening here. But I do think that people are going to be taking note at different things, like the Rose Bowl parade next year and different bigger events that are not under the federal government.
And one of the things that was very interesting to me, what you said earlier in the show, was it's really the last mile they're very concerned about securing, right? It's rare that you're going head on against the actual event itself in some sort of attack. It's the tailgate at Taylor Swift. It's the Bourbon Street. I mean, look, we've been, a lot of us have been to New Orleans. We know how close the Superdome is to Bourbon Street. It's essentially walkable, which is rare for an arena like that and an event like that. So it's a compact security kind of perimeter. And so you're right. It's not just the events themselves, but the things around them that a lot of people might go to but aren't in that, say, I use this kind of word colloquially, hardened perimeter.
Yeah. All right, well, the FBI is trying to determine whether a Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas was a terrorist act. Authorities believe fireworks, gas tanks, and camping fuel were connected to a detonation system controlled by the driver, who reportedly had a military background. The driver was found dead inside the vehicle.
As of right now, our number one goal is to ensure that we have the proper identification of the subject involved in this incident. Following that, our second objective is to determine whether this was an act of terrorism or not. I know everybody's interested in that word and trying to see if we can say, hey, this is a terrorist attack. That is our goal, and that's what we're trying to do.
What are your big questions here, Jamil, about what happened in Las Vegas?
Well, we're hearing rumors this guy was a military officer, served for almost 2 decades, including in the special forces. There's also a claim out there that he may have served at the same base with our New Orleans suspect. We haven't confirmed any of that as yet. But the question is, one, were these 2 attacks related? They used the same car sharing app, rented it both.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it just could be a bad day for that car sharing app, Turo, or it could be that there was a relationship here, right? That the inspiration, where they got the idea from, may have suggested, hey, use an app like this to get a car. They both rented their cars in remote locations, one in Texas, one in Colorado, then drove to their targets, Las Vegas and New Orleans, respectively. So query whether there's something going on here that's a relationship. It doesn't appear so at this time, right?
Yeah.
It appears the attack in Vegas looks a little more political. An Elon Musk Tesla vehicle with the Trump hotel. That has a political feel to it, as the sheriff noted in his press conference. At the same time, there are these weird coincidences. Both U.S. Army officers, both running on the same app, same day, right? More to be seen
And
about what's
ISIS
going on.
types likes to do the coordinated attacks on the same day.
That's exactly right. This is part of their playbook. They're looking to recruit Americans. They're looking for particular kinds of targets, vulnerable individuals. We know that Shamsuddin Jabbar, for example, had issues with divorce, potential mental health issues, money issues, right? He's vulnerable, right? And we see now how deadly that turned out.
Yeah, and there's so many more questions about that as well. Jamil, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Appreciate your expertise.
Thanks, Manu.